Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. And I want you to brace yourselves, people. It'll be like a bolt out of the blue. Another SNP policy has crashed and burned and failed, this time in the courts, where it had to actually be taken to a legal challenge, and the courts have agreed that the SNP have got it wrong and what they're doing is unlawful. Well, you couldn't have seen that coming, could you? Apart from everybody saw that coming, which is why they knew when they went to court they'd win the case. The SNP knew they were going to lose the case, but they still had to go to court rather than conceding because, they're never wrong. Anyway, what they're saying is short-term lets. This is all about. And if you're an owner of a property that you want to let it out, you're certainly not going to put it into long-term rental because the laws brought in by the SNP that protect the tenants are so stringently one-sided that effectively a tenant could go in, immediately not pay rent, and would live there for in excess of a year before they were thrown out. And there is nothing the landlord can do. So landlords are saying, well, there's a lot of risk and possible, no reward here. Why should I take that risk? And so they're going on to the likes of Airbnb, and especially in Glasgow or Edinburgh, where, you're going to get a lot of tourism coming in, and they can rent these out for days here, days there. Especially with Edinburgh, especially with the Fringe, when the Fringe is on. They'll rent out and get a lot of money on these short-term rentals. And of course, being short-term, going through Airbnb, they don't have, the tenants that are in there for a few days, they're effectively house guests. They don't have the rights that long-term tenants have. And so there's none of that legal shenanigans going on. And so that's what the landlords are choosing to do. And the SNP don't like it because they say there's a housing crisis caused by the SNP. And they say, no, you're not allowed to do this with your property. We've got to do this with your property. We're in charge of your property, they're saying. And the courts have said, no way, Buster. No, you're not. We'll take a look at this and see what is going on. But isn't it good? Another policy gone. So yet another SNP policy goes belly up after the judge rules short-term let scheme is unlawful. Ministers have been urged to go back to the drawing board after the crackdown on short-term lets such as Airbnbs in Edinburgh, and are due to be ruled out nationwide next year, suffered a legal defeat. So they were trying to get this in Edinburgh initially and then put it across the whole of Scotland next year, and the court said, no, you cannot do that. It is unlawful. Please go back and look again. Because they really did want to control other people's property. It's not theirs to control, but they wanted the control over it, and they said, no, if you own this, we'll tell you what to do with your property. That is totally against any kind of justice or even human rights. I think the Human Rights Act, the European Convention on Human Rights, does include the free enjoyment of private property. So, hey. Another SNP government policy is unravelling after a judge said aspects of Edinburgh's short-term let scheme were unlawful. It follows similar setbacks for the deposit return scheme and the gender reforms and just about everything else the SNP have done for the last 2 years. New licensing rules for letting properties such as Airbnbs were passed by the SNP Green Coalition in January 22. They are supposed to ease Scotland's housing crisis, but critics warned they were too tough and could wreck the country's vital tourism industry. I'll tell you something else. The SNP have caused this housing crisis. They have cut the investment for house building massively. And so there's nowhere near enough houses actually being built, number one. Number two, they have, like I said earlier in the header, made the stringent laws on tenancy so harsh that a lot of the landlords are getting out of the market and selling the houses to private ownership. That's taking rental properties out. And not everybody can afford to buy a house. Some are dependent on rental properties. And if you take that out, then it's not there to even be rented. So it doesn't matter. These people are going to be homeless simply because there is no house to rent. And of course, with a smaller market of rental properties, that by necessity, the rules of law of supply and demand, the rents go up harshly because there's a smaller market and a very ever greater need for them and a smaller supply of them. And so obviously the price will go up to the market value. And of course, no matter how much you put it up, there's always someone who's going to be able to afford it. And that's what's happening. And this is a self-made housing crisis by the SNP. And then they're trying to solve their own problem. They're eating their own biscuits, really, because they are forcing other people with their own private property that they have to do this and jump through these hoops so that they can, the SNP can take control. And it is wrong. Anyway, after pleas for a delay were granted, all short-term lets will have to be fully licensed by July the 1st, 2024. But Edinburgh City Council wanted to go ahead with the original start date of October 2023 due to concerns about the high number of flats in the capital being used by visitors. Yeah, well, what business is it of yours? This is the thing. Landlords and property marketing companies took legal action after the biggest crowdfunding campaign in British legal history. They welcomed the ruling by Lord Braid at the Court of Session in Edinburgh as a victory for law and common sense. Miles Briggs, the Scottish Conservative Shadow Housing Secretary, said, "This ruling is further damning proof that the SNP's short-term let scheme is fatally flawed. Scotland is in the grip of a housing crisis under the SNP, and their short-term let scheme is patently unfit for purpose." He says this decision on the Edinburgh scheme would be an urgent wake-up call to ministers who have typically ploughed ahead and arrogantly ignored advice from industry experts. While we must be conscious of taking specific local needs into account, the SNP needs to urgently rethink their plans if they are yet to avoid another policy completely unravelling. Their housing policy is awful. Their housing policy is just... it's collapsing. They are not building 10% of the house. If I can't remember what the figure was, I did read this, and it's something like Scotland needs to build 50,000 houses a year, and currently it's about 5,000. So it's a tenth of the minimum need. The more you build, the better. But a minimum need is 50,000, and they're building 5. Now, no way is that going to help anyone. You know. It's just crazy. They do these things. They make a problem with their own policies, and then they come up with even worse policies to try and solve the original policy or the original problem that their policy created. It's almost as though they don't know what they're doing. Anyway, I shall round off and I shall come up and we shall laugh at these morons as once again they're shown up to be completely unfit for purpose. Okay. We shouldn't be surprised. I mean, everything they do is completely useless. They haven't got a bright idea in their head. And the worst thing is, whatever idea they do come up with, they start discussing it. At no point do they ever get experts in. And even on the odd chance that somebody in that room is an expert, they ignore them and they never listen to them because they think they know best. And here they go. They're thinking, these B&Bs, we'll have them. We'll put our people in them. We'll put the homeless in them. Well, never mind what the owner of the property says. We'll just override this with our law. And there it is, thrown out. And so yes, people of Edinburgh, when the Fringe starts, please do make lots of money off renting out your own property. It's your business. I'm not involved in it. Don't care what you do. If there's homelessness in Scotland, it's up to the SNP to build more houses. And I will be fair and say it is not just a Scottish problem. There is a massive shortfall of housing across the whole of the United Kingdom. They need to build in excess of 300,000 houses a year just to meet the demands. And of course, a lot of that will be going to people coming across the channel. There's going to be hundreds of thousands a year coming in illegally. And so you still need all these houses. But they still, regardless of the rights and wrongs of that, they still need homes. You know, even if it's only temporary, they still need homes. But with families growing, with, you know, people coming in, you've got marriages splitting and things. There's a lot more single families, if you like. Two people might be in a relationship, but they both live in their own homes and things like that. There's a lot of that going on. So yes, there is a massive demand for homes. And they have to be good homes and have to be good size and all sorts of things. So it isn't just a Scottish problem. But this solution is a Scottish solution. It's the SNP solution. It just don't wash, does it? And even the court said that and said, no. You're not having it. Go away. Think it out again. And the solution is simple. Go out, find a spot of land and just build a new town. I mean, seriously, just pick a bit of land and build a new town and put 50,000 houses on it and be done. And then you've got no issue. Anyway, I shall round off there. Thank you very much for listening. If you like what you see in here on the channel, please hit that subscribe button and do please. We are getting close to our target. It's just over the horizon, but there's a nice long path. It's like the Wizard of Oz. The yellow brick road's there, coming up to 5,000. We'd love to get to 5,000 by the end of, hopefully the end of June. But I mean, realistically, the end of July. That'd be super. So if you haven't yet, do please hit that subscribe button. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, if you've got a property, really do think about letting it out on a long-term basis. These people do need homes. And goodbye.